All right, Evil Dead weapon tier list. Now, before we get started, and before I give my opinion on this, there's two things that need to be mentioned. First of all, rarity is very important in this game. So regardless of how this tier list shakes out, even the worst weapons in the game, if you find a legendary version of that weapon, pick it up. Like, it's gonna be better than the common weapon that's that's S tier. If you get a D tier legendary, it's gonna be better than an S tier common. Okay. The only time that there would ever really be an exception to that is the second point that I want to make, which is that some characters specialize in certain weapons. So for instance, the meat hammer is not that good, but it's better on Kelly because she has a perk, an ability built into her character that makes her do more damage with the meat hammer. More dismemberment damage, more balance bar damage, more regular damage, everything. So that weapon is way better on her. Same goes for the chainsaw on whichever Ash it is. I think it's Army of Darkness Ash. And so on and so forth. Same with the sword on whatever his name is. Arthur. So yeah, if they specialize in the weapon, that's going to make a difference, and the rarity of the weapon is going to make a difference. This is just what should you pick up if they're all common rarity. If you're just starting out and there's a few different weapons in a house, which one should you take? Now, this is also going to vary depending on what character you're playing. Like, if you're playing AOD Ash, you want stuff that gives you big balance bar damage over dismemberment because he wants to land a lot of finishers. Outside of that, I think everybody else is probably a little different. Or it's probably the same. Different from AOD Ash, but the same to each other. Anyway, let's get into it. First of all, we'll start from the bottom up. Worst weapon in the game, without question, is the improvised spear. I don't even know why this weapon's like in the game. It is so bad. It has 40 damage, which is abysmal. And then look at its dismemberment and balance bar damage. That's terrible. 20 and 20. That's the lowest in the game, other than like the meat cleaver does 15 balance bar damage, but it makes up for it with 50 dismemberment. Like, everything else is like the hunter's knife, dude. It's got the same balance bar damage as the hunter's knife, but 30 less dismemberment. Like, it's so bad. And it tries to make up for it by having better speed, like having 3 speed and 4.5 range. But the dismemberment and balance bar damage is so terrible. I think this is definitely in the lowest tier. And then the other one would be the meat hammer. The meat hammer's down there in D tier. I'd say these are the two weapons that hold down D tier by themselves. Meat hammer also really bad. The spear was 20 and 20 for dismemberment and balance bar, but it did 40 damage and had 4.5 range. The meat hammer has 3 worse damage, 1.5 worse range, and only 5 better balance bar damage. The meat hammer is arguably even worse than the spear, but those two together are definitely the two worst weapons in the game. And like I said, rarity matters. I've picked up a legendary meat hammer before, and I absolutely dominated the whole match. So rarity is important. That's why rarity in this game is so cool, is because it can take weapons that are really bad and make them really good. So there's never going to be a weapon that's absolutely useless 100% of the time. All right, so the next ones are going to be a little more difficult. Looking at this, I'd say, boy, it's a tough one. I would probably say the meat cleaver would be next. Meat cleaver is one of the other really bad weapons. It's got good dismemberment damage at 50, but it's still really bad in terms of damage. The range is obviously really poor. Balance bar damage is basically non-existent. And here's the real kicker. Look at this. It is a worse in every way version of a machete. Machete has 1 more range, It does 5 more dismemberment, and it does 20 more balance bar damage. So it is worse in every way compared to the machete. I didn't know that until I started working on making this video. I had no idea the machete was better in every single way. So unless you find a better rarity meat cleaver, you should always take the machete over the meat cleaver every time. Yeah. So that was interesting to me. So the meat cleaver is real bad in that regard. I mean, it's still better than the two behind it, because if you look at the meat hammer, I mean, same exact stats, except 10 less balance bar damage in exchange for 30 more dismemberment. So the meat cleaver, it's not that much better than the meat hammer. It kind of depends on what you want, depending on if you prefer having balance bar damage so you can hit finishers or not. But yeah, it's not good. I'd still put it a little bit ahead of the meat hammer, because overall it's what, between dismemberment and balance bar it's 45. Between dismemberment and balance bar for meat cleaver it's 65. So a little bit better than the meat hammer. Still not good though. Next, let's see. Let's go through this. The hunting knife is so difficult to gauge. The hunting knife is so difficult to gauge because it's like, it's the only 5-speed weapon in the game, which is great. It's a sharp weapon, which combos with a lot of the warriors who have a ton of perks that help them out with sharp weapons. But it just, like, it's insane because it could stun lock people. But the problem is it's a double-edged sword, because then if you have the hunting knife, it stun locks your teammates. So a lot of times you don't want to pick this up, because then if the demon possesses you, you can stun lock your teammates. But it doesn't stun lock other characters. Like, it doesn't stun lock a boss. So it's a really weird weapon. It's hard to gauge. It can do crazy things. I've gone back and forth on hunting knife 100 times. There was a time where I thought it was the best melee weapon in the game. Now I think it's like mid. Like, it's really hard to gauge how good the hunting knife is. It's really hard to say. 50 dismemberment's pretty good. That 5 speed is crazy. I'm not sure what would be next. The pickaxe only does 40 and has 4 range. And this is 55 and 35 on the machete. So it's just a flat out upgrade of the pickaxe too. The pickaxe is a worse in every way version of the machete. That's brutal. Well, the pickaxe does 3 more damage. I shouldn't say that. But outside of that, it's better. The machete's better. I don't know how big of a difference 3 damage really makes. That's an interesting one. The hand axe is better than I thought it was. It's got 4 range, 3 speed, 40 damage, 50 and 35. So I feel like they're all kind of in the same category. I would say this. I would say that I would probably say that I would put the pickaxe here, and I would put the hand axe here, and meat cleavers behind them. And I would say that they're kind of similar, the hand axe and the pickaxe. Like, if we compare their stats, 40, 34, and 50 and 35. And this is 40, 34, and 50 and 30. So the hand axe is just 5 points better in balance bar damage. And then the machete is just ahead of that. So I would say I'd probably put the machete right up here, just 1 tier above these 3. And then I haven't used much of the machete. Like, now I'm going to use more of the machete, just looking at the stats. After that, these are the weapons where I'd say, for the most part, you can't go wrong with these weapons. Maybe I wouldn't say that. The hunting knife. I'd put the hunting knife in this tier. This is going to be my most controversial one for sure. There's going to be people who really disagree about where I put the hunting knife. In my testing so far, I haven't been able to do a lot with it. It just doesn't do as much damage as like picking up one of the bigger, like slower weapons. I just don't feel like the speed difference is significant enough to make up for how little damage it does. Like, I always feel like if I pick up a sword, even though it's much slower, I'm dealing more damage than I am with a hunter's knife or a hunting knife. That's just me, though. Maybe I'm out of my mind. All right. Surprisingly, I don't think the chainsaw is as good as I thought it would be. It's 75 and 50, but it's 80 damage, 1 speed, 3.5 range. The chainsaw is not as good as I thought it would be. I would say the chainsaw is next. Chainsaw would be kind of in... I'm tempted to not even put it in A tier, but I guess I'll put it in A tier. Chainsaw's okay. It does 80 damage, 1 speed, 3.5 range, 75 dismemberment is pretty gross. 50 balance bar is good too. It's just a solid, like, all-around weapon. If you look at the spiked bat, it does 70 and 5 range and 50 and 50. What does this do? This does 75, 50, and 80. Actually, the bat's probably worse. The difference is the range, but the range, like, range really doesn't matter, dude. I would actually probably put the bat in B tier. I'd say the chainsaw is up in A. And then the last three, sledgehammer, sword, all three of them are really good. The sledgehammer and the sword. But I would say the sword is next. Now let's look at the chainsaw. Chainsaw does 80, 75, and 50. Sword does 80, 75, and 50, but has a half point of extra range. So it's the chainsaw, but a little bit better. With a little bit more range. That's all it is. So same exact stats, except the sword has a half point of more range. And then the two big ones are the axe and the sledgehammer. And I think that both of these are in S tier. Axe and sledge are both in S tier, and neither one, I guess axe is the best weapon in the game, isn't it? Yeah, it is. The lumberjack axe is the best weapon in the game because it has the same stats as the sledgehammer, except it does 75 and dismemberment, 50 balance bar. The sledgehammer does 50 and 70, and it does 10 less damage. So, yeah. Wait, 70 and 50 and 70. Damn, the chainsaw's fucking better. 70 and 50 and 70. I guess it depends on how much you value the sledgehammer and balance bar damage. Like, how much do you value balance bar damage versus dismemberment? I guess that's going to vary depending on the character. Otherwise, yeah, I guess we slip this sledgehammer down here. In fact, look at that. In the middle of my own tier list, I'm changing my mind. The sledgehammer I would definitely put behind these two, and I'd put the axe in the lone S tier. The axe is crazy. Like, I had no idea that the axe was, like, the best weapon in the game. Which is weird to me. 80 damage, which is the only one that matches it is the chainsaw. But then it does 75 and 50. Which is the same as what the chainsaw does. And it just it has maximum range. So it's the best weapon in the game. The sword also very good. Same as the axe, only it has 1 point of less range. So in a way, these three all just have a difference of range. They have the same stats, but different ranges. So if you don't care about range, then I guess all three of these could be on the same tier. But we'll say because the axe is the same, except it's 1 point better. It'll be the lone weapon in S tier. So yeah, I would definitely put the axe in S tier, but you can't go wrong with any of them. Like if you're gonna go pick a weapon, I'd say the 4 you want to look for are the axe, the sword, the chainsaw, and the sledgehammer. All of them very good. And then after that, you want to look for anything else. But like I said, it's going to vary depending on your character. It's going to vary depending on your perks. All that stuff. So that's something to keep in mind. But let me know in the comments what you think is the best weapon in the game. And also, some of this is just based on what I've used. Like, the reason I had Sledgehammer up in S tier before is because I've used it a ton, and it's amazing being able to, like, early game hit a mob once, and they're immediately staggered for a finish. Like, that's really good. Balance bar damage, I think, is excellent and really underrated. That's why, like, I'm still tempted to put the Sledgehammer in S tier. Like, you know, it's still got 5.0 range, and the balance bar damage is crazy. Damn, dude, I kind of want to put it back up there. It's so hard, though. Like, I know it does 10 less damage, but that balance bar damage is so crazy. And also, my name is Sledge, so that's kind of insulting to not put it in S tier. I'm doing it. I'm putting it in S tier. There it is. It's final. Boom. Sledgehammer in S tier with the axe. Those are the 2 S tier weapons. I feel good about it. I like that list. I like it. I'm doing it. I'm calling it. It's done. Video's over. This is my tier list for melee weapons in Evil Dead, the game. Let me know in the comments what you think. And there will also be a link in the description for this tier list so you can fill out your own if you'd like. Go ahead and try it. Tell me what you think.